Oh, hello my friends. I just spent about a week making a video that turned out to be an absolute pile of shit. So needless to say, that got thrown away faster than a child's lovingly crafted macaroni art, and I decided to do something much more fun instead, which was turning some regular old boring space marines into these funny little squats.
Swamp Rip. Miniatures.
Now, in the wonderful world of Warhammer, squats are basically your bog standard sci-fi space dwarves, having been shrunk down by generations of gravitational pull. And these guys are pretty popular back in the day, appearing first in Rogue Trader, then fading into obscurity and ultimately complete non-existence through further iterations of Warhammer. They have reappeared in 40k somewhat recently though, with the Leagues of Votan miniatures, but I'm not a massive fan of those and wanted to make my own ones that would really embody the squat motto of "we have small bodies but huge cocks." I decided to use a bunch of Space Marine parts for this build, as I want my squats to be equipped with some pretty chunky sci-fi armor, and also because I had them laying around. But overall, this was a really simple but satisfying kit bash. I made a start with the legs first, and I chose the ones without the big old circular knee pads, as it would make the shortening process a bit more simple, and the idea of these was basically just to reduce the length by about a third or so, and to remove any overtly Space Marine iconography such as these purity seals, which I sliced off like yesterday's gabagool. Then, after separating the leg pieces and making our squatty length adjustments, I carved out a circular divot into the lower leg chunks so everything could sit nicely, and rejoined the shortened pieces with some blobs of green stuff to fill any gaps. Before the glue had sat, I gently pushed the legs down onto my desk, which helped them find their natural standing position, and all this legwork made me wonder if squats would still have to hit the gym for leg days. Next, it was time to add the torso, and I had to find a way of squattifying this without really removing any size, as I wanted to keep all the belts and bits in place. So instead of chopping it up like the legs, I basically just trimmed out this bottom section to make it hollow and cut away some extra material around the waist. This allowed the torso to sit a lot lower than normal, giving the impression of the upper body being a slight bit shorter than your average Space Marine. For the arms, I did the same kind of thing as I did with the legs, just chopping them down and removing about a third of the overall length before gluing them back together. But some of the torsos I'd used had a big old fat Imperialis slapped on them that interfered with the placement of our shorter, stubbier arms, so I chopped those away and filed down the chest to give us a slightly flatter and easier surface to work with. After sticking down the main bulk of the arm, I used a bit more green stuff to bridge the gap between the wrist and the hand, allowing them to find a slightly more natural pose overall. And I thought of these small boys lugging around some big old weapons was amusing to me, so I equipped them with some heavy ordnance, and I had to make some adjustments to this bazooka boy by incorporating the bottom receiver of a bolter, which left me with this slightly ridiculous pose, but I was feeling it, so it. The remaining arms either got added onto the foregrip of the weapon or pointing out on the bazooka boy for a slightly more dynamic effect, and with our boys rearmed in more ways than one, I just plonked some pauldrons down to finish off the shoulders. I debated leaving these off as they do look quite oversized, but I think that just adds to the overall kind of chunky aesthetic we're going for. I got this Stargrave Mercenaries box a while ago to use for random parts, and it had some cool little helmeted guys in I thought looked kind of sci-fi-ish, so I stuck a few of those down, with the one on our bazooka boy being my favourite. Then decided to chuck in a few backpacks so they could carry around their space beans or their marmite or whatever it is that squats eat, maybe chipolatas. But these backpacks from the Imperial Guard heavy weapon teams were perfect for the job and didn't need much work to make them fit. I also equipped one with a few leftover rocket things to give our squatzuka something extra, as well as this backblast thing I'd completely forgotten about earlier. As a very final touch, I used a bunch of these little grenades on each side of the hips to fill in any gaps and hide those recognisable Space Marine butt flap things. And there we go, all assembled and ready for painting. And like I said, a pretty simple kit bash overall, but a really enjoyable one, and I was feeling excited to paint these boys up. Which was good, as I had absolutely no clear plan for painting. I was just a boy with some space dwarves and a dream, and I'd started by Zenithal priming the minis, which was as pointless as a bald hedgehog, as my first spur of the moment idea involved slapping on a fully metallic base coat, followed by a turquoise contrast paint layer, as I thought this would give me some kind of cool looking metallic blue space armor shit, which it probably would have if I wasn't so heavy handed with my layers of contrast paint, but I liked the colour and it had the faintest whiff of metallic in some places still, like farting down the Grand Canyon, so I moved on to my pauldrons, where I did a kind of yellow hazard stripe thing, since that's my go-to for anything remotely sci-fi or industrial. And the stripes themselves were more wonky than a sideways donkey, so I stippled on some rusty damaged spots, partly to build up more of an interesting look, but mainly just to cover up my shoddy painting. And then I went fully in with a layer of dirty down rust for some unknown reason. I'm not really sure if this actually added anything to the pauldrons in the end, but it definitely added some nice fumes to my room, so not all bad. And after a few more little yellow scratchy bits, they were looking a bit sort of less shit than they were on track for, so I called that a win and finished off the rest of the armor itself by using a dark blue wash in some recesses, kind of like a pin wash basically, and then giving some really quick and easy edge highlights using a brighter blue colour. At this point my excitement had now faded and I was having a bit of a mid paint job crisis, to be honest, as I wasn't really sure where this was all going, so I decided to be a bit wild and paint the base halfway through instead of at the end, as I thought maybe all the white down here was throwing me off and making it harder to see the wood for the trees, well, whatever that's supposed to mean. And I mean, it did kind of help, I think, in the sense that I now had one less aspect of the paint scheme I could procrastinate on, but I had a couple of biscuits anyway, and that got me back on track a bit. So I was able to return to my painting with the determination of a wily honey badger and channel all of that determination into the most mediocre backpacks you've seen in your life. For the weapons, I wanted to go bold, so I cracked the yellow back out, which ended up being so bold it basically gave me whiplash, so I went about toning them down a bit, using some more black hazard stripes to help break up that yellow, and a splash of a sepia wash to give it a slightly warmer and kind of more muted tone. I did a bit more brown stippling on the weapons like I did with the pauldrons, but I think it came out a lot better on these because I was a bit more sparing with it and used the small brush to add some spots more deliberately, so those were looking pretty cool. Then I painted in their helmets using quite a bold red to contrast with everything else we've done so far. I gave their tiny little slivers of face flesh a quick touching up and painted in the lenses of their space goggles. I decided to add a few white stripes onto the helmets to break that red up a bit, which seemed to work, and then all that was left was adding a bit more pizzazz onto the weapons. I wanted to add some cheeky little glow effects to the plasma and melter boys, so I started by base coating the relevant areas with a bit of white, and then for the plasma coils I used a fluorescent green as the base colour with some regular bright green paints on the surrounding areas to get a quick and easy kind of little light reflection glow effect popping off. I added a tiny bit of white at the base of the plasma coils and into the little ports on the front here to finish her off, and there you have literally the easiest plasma effect going. For the melter, I wanted to get a kind of hot glowing barrel effect popping off, and keeping it in the theme with the video, I didn't have a good plan for this of course, so I just started going back and forth with different colours to build up a glowing orangey look, and it turned out kinda good but not great I suppose. I definitely need to practice this effect more and finesse my process a bit. But now my friends, the miniatures were all finished, so let's see how they came out. And there we have it, some fun little squatty boys for your eyeballs to enjoy, and overall I think these guys came out pretty good. Definitely a lot of room for improvement as always, but I had a lot of fun building and painting these, and they were the perfect little palette cleanser after that piece of shit video that will never see the light of day. If you enjoyed this video though, then please leave a like or a subscribe or drop a comment down below to let me know how goofy these little guys are and how I could have done literally everything better and why I'm a worthless barnacle. As always though, I have been your friendly neighborhood swamp rat, and I will see you very soon in another video. See ya.